Hey guys, John here. Today we are checking out this really cool pedal by Origin Effects. The RD Kompakt Hot Rod Distortion Preamp or amp in a box style pedal, made in the UK, super sturdy and heavy, and it sounds and feels really good under the fingers. And yeah, this thing basically sounds like a hot rodded British amplifier, and it's super versatile too. So let's go ahead and get started with a demo song using this pedal into a clean channel of a tube amplifier. Take a listen. Wonderful, wonderful. So that sounded really good. The guitar that I used there was my ESP LTD Bill Kelleher 600 with the Mojo Tone Hellbender pickups. That was going into the RD Kompakt Hot Rod pedal and into the clean channel of my Lichtlaerm Audio Prometheus amplifier with the warm setting. And I was using the pedal to basically get all the overdriven tones. So the clean channel was dialed in to sound like a perfect pedal platform basically. Kind of flat, boring, and warm sounding. And then for the pedal, I used the EQ2 setting and dialed it into taste, basically. And I think that this pedal sounded so good in that demo. Really nice. Now the amp was being fed into my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12 cabinet, loaded up with a Celestion Vintage 30, mic'd up with two SM57s and one MD421 Kompakt. The signal was going into my DAW, panned hard left and right with a low cut at 80 Hz or so. And that's it. And by the way, if you want impulse responses for all my speakers, check out my web store. And if you want to buy this wonderful pedal at one of my affiliate links, also check out the links below for Thomann and Sweetwater. So, amp in a box style pedals. I love them. They are wonderful. The idea is basically that they are distortion pedals, but with a really amp-like quality. So a pedal like this, especially this one, can basically sound like a full-fledged tube preamp. So that is really, really cool. And these pedals are getting better and better. And honestly, this is one of the best ones that I've ever tried. It does that Marshall sound, the British sound, but it definitely can do that hot rodded sound as well, you know, with more gain than your average Marshall, basically. And yeah, this pedal basically has a circuit without tubes that is designed to sound as if it is an actual tube amplifier. I believe that pedals like these use JFET technology. I'm not an expert when it comes to that stuff. All I know is that in this case, this pedal sounds and feels really organic. So that is wonderful. It's really a joy to play through. Now, according to the Origin Effects website, the features of this pedal are as follows. It's a complete hot-rodded valve amp style signal path with dedicated Class A preamp, long-tailed pair phase inverter, and push-pull output stage. Whatever that means, it sounds good. Variable negative feedback to fine-tune breakup characteristics or boost presence. Reactive design simulates interaction between amp and speaker for realistic feel and authentic sound. So that's kind of what I meant when I said that it feels really good under the fingers, really gooey and warm, just as a real tube amplifier does. Accurately recreates power supply sag for subtle natural compression. And that is also really nice. Definitely not all distortion pedals in the world do this, so that's really cool. And it adds to that gooey feel. Full control of tone, dynamic response, and distortion characteristics. The interactive blend control backs off the gain as you add dry signal for the most natural sound. Tour grade all metal construction. And yeah, this thing definitely is very sturdy, and it's one of the most heavy pedals that I've ever tried. Powerful tone shaping post drive EQ. High impedance buffered bypass with silent switching. Designed and assembled by hand in England. Designed and built in England. So yeah, those are like the basic features as stated by the website. Now let's take a look at the controls that this pedal has. We're going to start up top. Of course, we have an output control over here. That's just your volume. We have the gain control over here. You can go from clean or edge of breakup tones to high gain. That is really nice. We also have this blend control over here, which you can use to blend in the dry signal. I don't really use that myself, but I'll let you guys hear how that sounds later in the video. And then the EQ is not as you'd expect. So we have a high control over here, the lows control over here, and the more pres control over here. Now the highs control affects the feel and response of the amp rather than the overall EQ curve, right? So it changes the preamp voicing and makes it more articulate, basically. Same for the lows. It's not your EQ in that it adds a lot of bass or takes a lot of bass away. This controls the amount of low end that's going into the distortion. So for a more fat tone, crank the lows control, and for a more tight tone and controlled tone, lower the lows control. Now the more pres control over here has an effect on the negative feedback. When you turn it counterclockwise, it reduces the negative feedback. And when you crank it clockwise, it emulates the sound of a presence control of an old Marshall. So these are all controls that really affect the distortion character and the feel of the pedal. And then we have this little switch over here, this little switch, and there are 3 settings over there. The top setting, the P-amp, the preamp setting, that is suited for this pedal when you're using it as a preamp straight into a power amp or into an interface or into a modeler, something like that. And it turns off this little control over here, which is basically like an entire tone stack in one. So with the EQ1 and the EQ2 settings, so the middle setting and the bottom setting, this control basically either adds highs and scoops the low mids out or makes the sound more mid-humpy, basically. So that means that you can make this pedal work for any type of amplifier, which is really cool. So bright and scooped sounding amplifiers like a Fender Combo, for example, or an amp that's more thick and warm sounding like the one, or at least with the settings that I tried in the intro track. So again, if you choose EQ1 or EQ, so the middle or the bottom setting, this becomes your tone stack basically, and you can use that to fine tune the tone to make the pedal sound good for the amplifier that you're using it with. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. So that means that this pedal is quite versatile. Either put it in front of your clean channel of your tube or solid state amplifier, or run it direct into a power amp or into your interface. However, if you're gonna run it direct into your interface, for example, you're gonna need to use some sort of cabinet simulation, okay? Anyway, so the best thing that we can do right now is just plug it in to the same setup. I'm gonna use my Schecter Solo 2 Custom this time, great guitar. And I'm going to tweak the controls, play some very simple chords and riffs, just so you guys can hear how the controls affect the tone and all that good stuff. Take a listen, enjoy. All right, so what we have here is the Origin Effects RD Kompakt Hot Rod going into the Lichtlaerm Audio Prometheus. Basically the exact same setup as in the demo song. So the pedal is going into the clean channel of this amplifier. The amp is being fed into the Grossmann Fatbox 1x12, loaded up with the Celestion Vintage 30, mic'd up with 3 different mics, 2 SM57s and 1 MD421 Kompakt, just to get a good and even full range sound going on. Now, if we turn the pedal off, you get to hear how that sounds. So that is the clean channel of the Prometheus in the warm setting. So it's going to sound a lot more dark than with the bright setting, which we'll also try in a minute. And when we turn it back on, so that's basically a very good pedal platform setting. It's very even sounding and very flat sounding. When you have a very bright sounding clean channel, you're going to have to use different settings. Presence is set at around 2 o'clock, depth at around 11:30, volume halfway, bass, mid and treble at around noon. I bumped up the mids just a touch. Now, as I said, I'm running the same settings as in the intro track, which is a nice sort of mid to high gain tone, really hot rodded British tone basically, which is obviously what this pedal does really well. This pedal feels really great to play through. Very organic, and it has that tube amp sag going on. Now we're going to start with these settings. So we are on the EQ2 setting for the post-drive EQ controls, and we have the ADJ control at around, let's say, 1030 or so. We'll mess with that in a second. Let's try the tone shaping controls first. And we're going to start with the gain control. So let's see how much gain we can get out of this pedal. That's already a lot of gain. Let's crank it up all the way. So yeah, that is a lot of gain. Really cool, but I think at around 2 o'clock is plenty for me. Let's see how low the gain will go if we lower it. That's a nice crunchy tone. And when we lower it all the way, yeah, it's basically quiet. So you can get some nice edge of breakup tones out of this pedal, which is really cool. And then you can use the blend control over here to blend in the clean signal. Let's try some of that. Raise the gain a little bit. So with the blend control, you can basically do what a tube screamer does. So a tube screamer has an overdrive circuit built into it, and then the clean signal is always blended in there as well. For my personal taste, I would not use the blend control that much, but it's there if you need it. Now let's raise the gain back up a little bit and then start trying out the tone controls. And let's start with the high control. Now, this is not a tone control in the sense of it being like a post EQ. So it's not going to make the tone a lot brighter. It's going to change the response and the clarity of the strings and all that stuff. So pay attention to what it does and listen very closely to the response. Let's crank it up all the way. So that adds a lot of clarity and string definition, right? Let's set it to noon. And then lower it. So turning it off basically thickens up the tone. And it also feels and sounds more tight with highs up all the way. So it helps with the cut. And it's very musical, so you can go quite crazy with that. Now let's try the lows control. And let's start with it all the way off and the gain up a little bit. So that's a lot more tight. Really reminds me of a cranked Plexi, right? Like a Marshall Plexi. See what happens when we start raising the lows. And let's start cranking it up even further. So when you crank it up, it starts to sound more thick and sludgy, right? And it basically also adds gain. So I think it's like pushing more signal from the low end into the preamp, basically. So I like that a lot. Let's try lows up all the way and highs down all the way. So that's nice and sludgy. Let's turn up highs all the way. Cool, so that's a little bit more modern, right? I like it a lot. Let's lower it a little bit as well as the highs. Let's say both to around 2 or 3 o'clock. Very nice. Now let's check out this control over here, more pres. This is kind of a subtle control. It affects the negative feedback. Let's lower the gain a little bit. And let's start with the control down all the way. Now supposedly this emulates an amp with no negative feedback. Let's see what happens when we raise it up. So there's some sort of crossover distortion going on. And once we start raising it, it does sound better indeed. Let's start raising it up more. So it opens up the amp sound in a nice way. And then up all the way. So you can use all of these controls to fine-tune the response of the pedal, basically. Now let's check out that adjustment control, the ADJ. It's basically an entire tone stack in one control, okay? So right now it's set to around, let's say 1030, and let's see what happens if we lower it. So it really depends on the amplifier that you're going to use, you know, how you set this thing. And when we raise it up, the sound is going to get more sort of dark and mid-range focused and a bit more woofy. So for this particular amplifier, this is the sweet spot. Now let's turn off the pedal. And then on the clean channel, go over to the brilliant setting. Which obviously makes the amp more bright. Let's see what happens now. So that's too bright. So now we can move over to EQ1. We can lower the presence a little bit here. Lower the volume a little bit more. So that sounds quite different, right? Now let's mess with that adjustment control once again. So that's more sort of scooped in the low mids. And let's put it to noon. So that control has an impact on the low mids, the treble. You know, it does a lot of things, basically scoops out the low mids when you put it to, you know, counterclockwise positions. In this case, I think it sounds right around here. Let's raise it up a little bit. Anyway, so that really helps to shape the tone and to make the pedal fit your amplifier. Now, what we can also do is set this to the Preamp. It's basically to use this pedal as a preamp to run it into a power amp. And with the Prometheus, we can turn the preamp off so that it's basically acting as a power amp alone. Let's see how that sounds. And now this control does nothing. So what we can do now is use the presence and depth controls on this amplifier to shape the tone. Let's add a little bit of depth, turn down the presence a touch. Let's add some more lows, remove a little bit of highs, add a little bit more gain as well. Let's see how that sounds. And then when we turn it off, it sounds like this. So that's just the power amp of the Prometheus. So you can use this pedal in a wide range of applications and scenarios, and you can really tweak the pedal so that it works for your setup, whether you're running into the clean channel of a tube or solid state amplifier, whether it's a bright or warm sounding clean channel, or into a power amp, tube, solid state, you name it. You can make this thing sound awesome. And it sounds good with a lot of settings, as you heard, because all the EQ controls are very musical. In this one, the adjustment control, the post-drive EQ adjustment control is the most drastic for the overall EQ shape, you know, of the pedal. And you can only use that with the EQ1 or EQ2 settings anyway. So that will really drastically change the response and sound of this pedal depending on the amp that you're using. Anyway, it's a great, great pedal. All right, that was the Origin Effects RD Compact Hot Rod, a really, really cool pedal. At first I was like, another amp in a box style pedal, another distortion pedal. But you know, when I took it out of the box, first I noticed how cool the design is because it looks really cool. It's super sturdy and quite heavy, so it feels really expensive. And then when I plugged it in, I was like, okay, this is serious stuff. It sounds really good. I'm using some cliche terms here, but it sounds and feels really organic and tube-like. Maybe more so than any other pedal that I've tried before. Of course, this is a hot-rodded British sound, right? So it's going to sound different than some of the modern metal pedals that I've demoed on the channel. But I like it a lot, and I like how you have a lot of control over the feel and the response of the distortion character and stuff. That is really nice. I like the adjustment control, the EQ control. It's a little bit limited. I would have preferred to just have like a 3-band EQ or something that would have made it more versatile for dialing it into your amplifier. However, it does do the job. Now, it's not an affordable pedal. It's around 360 euros or so, give or take, at Thomann or Sweetwater. It is made in the UK. It's super sturdy and it sounds really good. So it's probably worth it if you're looking for, you know, a boutique pedal that just sounds really good and has some really unique and cool features. So yeah, I like it a lot. There's not a lot that I don't like about it. Sounds excellent, looks really cool, and has a lot of appeal, in my opinion. Thanks a lot to the folks at Origin for sponsoring this video. Really appreciate it. Again, if you want to buy this pedal, buy it at one of my affiliate links at no additional cost. That way you get to support the channel. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to buy one of my IR packs, check out my own web store. And of course, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on this little pedal. I'd love to know. Also, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, as that really helps the channel out. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.